All right.
Mr. Smith,
We
what is
go.
what is happening, man?
Dude, look at your background, man. You're scaring everybody away.
I just want people to know that I know important people who are well educated and are contributing to society. That's all I'm doing.
You're
And,
too
and
funny,
if we
man.
and if we sell a couple of your books, so be it. We'll get to that in a second, but the important stuff first. Tell me how is the queen and the princesses doing right now?
Oh, thanks, man. They're doing great. The latest is we were at a gymnastics meet all weekend, which was pretty hilarious. Uh,
Hannah, Laura, Lexi,
uh,
or Tori? Who was?
so both of them, they were competing, and man, it is intense, man. I mean, these gymnastics kids, they practice like 4 or 5 hours a day. I mean, they're like 9, 10, 11 years old, and they're already breaking NCAA rules about how much you could like
At the
practice a
time,
week. Yes,
the time commitment. Yeah.
like
Is this
22 to
Center Elite?
25 hours a week. It's crazy.
Are they at Center Elite?
Yeah, yeah, they are.
But I'm guessing they're loving it.
They are, man. They're like all in. Like, they go and do 5 hours of gymnastics. They come home and they're walking on their hands in the kitchen. And I'm like, didn't you guys just do this?
So tell me the life of the girl dad. Is it just going from meet to meet? Like what kind of adjustments have you had to make when you spend most of your life around all this testosterone?
I mean, for a little while when they were a little bit younger, there was a streak going where like somebody cried in the house every day. Like every day there were tears, from top to it could have been dad, it could have been the youngest one. I mean, like there were tears for like hundreds of days, I swear. But now they're a little bit older, 14, 10, and 8. So we've gone through some of that, but they're awesome, man. I love being a girl dad.
That time is flying. I don't know. Oh, I remember the first when Hannah was born, and it just seems like yesterday. That doesn't mean we're getting old, though, does it? It can't be the same thing.
No, we're the same age, so just they're growing up around us, but we haven't changed.
Make sure you tell Kara I said hello.
I will for sure, man. She's doing great. She would definitely say hi. But what's new with you? Where are you at?
I am in St. Petersburg, Florida, my friend. I needed to work on my tan. It's a little too cold up there.
You
Um,
and me both.
yeah. I think State College probably needed a break from me anyway. But I definitely am total voyeur. I try. The one thing I really miss is not being able to catch any kind of sporting event on any day of the week. I'm definitely missing that because there's so
Yeah,
many talented athletes on that campus.
yeah,
So let's go back
absolutely.
to high school, man. Your high school career, were you like one of the five stars? Were you middle of the road? What was that experience like? Were you on the AU circuit?
Well, I went to that 5-star camp. Anybody who's familiar with basketball, that 5-star camp over at Robert Morris College, outside, 100 degrees in July. That was like the place to
Hills,
be. Yeah.
hills, bread and butter, living on bread and butter.
Oh, dude, the food was awful. I mean, I don't know if they even have the camp anymore, but it was so bad. And they would ask me like, "Hey, do you want to stay another week?" I'm like, "No, like I'm eating peanut butter and jelly every day because that's the best you guys got." Uh,
Yeah.
but
But it's a rite of passage, right? Because you get to measure
Pride of
yourself
Passage.
against the best in the country.
That's where everybody went, and now it's AAU. But at the time, like they would go to this 5-star camp, and my coach in high school, he was a former college coach. He coached at Northwestern and at Providence, and he's like, "You got to go to this camp, Tyler. This is the camp to go to." And I was like, "All right, great." So I remember seeing John Calipari speak there, and I remember Christian Leitner. He was actually my coach like for the whole week, which was awesome.
Right.
And so I wasn't a 5-star recruit by any means, but I was tall, I was skilled. I wasn't like super athletic, but just played super hard and had enough skills to kind of get noticed by some decent teams. And I went on a bunch of visits, just kind of around where I grew up in Chicago, like around. Went to Notre Dame a couple times, which was really cool. I went and saw Illinois play as an unofficial visit. And then came out to Penn State and was like, man, this is pretty awesome. Like, I could see this being a great place to be. And it's funny because, like, it wasn't on my radar in Chicago, but I joke that, like, literally the very first letter I got from Penn State, just kind of a form letter that everybody gets, and it was they spelled my name wrong on the letter. I'm like, how do you mess up Smith?
Yeah, yeah, or Tyler for that matter.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy. Oh, before they get to you brought up two things that I wanted to ask you real quick. Who are some of the players that you were playing against that people might know? And then the second question was, you talk about your neighborhood in Chicago. Didn't you have a guy who dabbled in basketball that kind of lived in your neighborhood? A lot of Penn State people that followed you might know, but was it there? Maybe he might be one of the NBA's greatest to live close to you. Is that accurate? That might have lived, or your parents' neighborhood?
Some guy, Jordan, I don't know, I can't remember his first name. But I tell you,
Right.
the 90s were a great time to be in Chicago for basketball, man. Like the
Yeah.
80s, that I was like, they weren't quite turning the corner, and then they finally turned the corner and started winning, and it was insane. And we tried to go to Michael Jordan's house on Halloween and trick or treat at his house. We're like, oh, wouldn't this be fun? Like, nobody's gonna think of this. And we show up, and like there's like a bajillion people trying to, like, knock on his gate
Right. Because he wasn't somewhere, could be considered a neighbor, right? Wasn't he?
He was probably 20 minutes down the road. So,
okay. Right. Right.
Not quite next door, but close enough.
Yeah. Well, that was the heyday to be living in Chicago, other than that weather. And some of the players you played against in 5-star, do you remember?
I don't know if it'd be names that anybody would remember unless they're like diehard basketball guys, but there's so many good guys that came through there. I mean, there would be like over 100 Division I coaches that would be at that camp throughout the week. And yeah, it was such great competition. I remember just being exhausted. They'd have you up like doing push-ups and stuff at like 7 a.m., like in the parking lot before you even went to breakfast. And
yeah, my problem was it is eat, sleep, drink basketball for what is it, 5 or 6 days, all day, every day. And I played a bunch of different sports. I was doing it because essentially at that time you had to go to 5-star if you wanted to get recruited.
Yeah,
was the
absolutely.
deal.
That was the deal.
And so, which coach was recruiting you when you started getting recruited by Penn State?
So the assistant coach was Chuck Swenson. Great dude. And
I just saw Chuck recently.
You did? Or
yeah, I was traveling. When I go north and south, when I drive, I stop through and see people, and he's in South Carolina now. And we watched the Penn State football game together at a place called the Ocadia Ale House, and it's right outside of Hilton Head. And there are Penn Staters who own it, who are good friends of mine, and it's the best place if you're ever in that area. Then you want it's called the Ocadia Ale House.
Very cool.
Yeah. Very cool. So Chuck is great. It was great to see him, man. He looks the same. Awesome. He's still a great guy.
He is phenomenal guy, man. And we look like twins if you ever see us next to each other. He's like 4'9", I'm like 6'9", so it's perfect.
Right.
But no, he's a great guy, and he was just so genuine, like just such an easy guy to talk to when we were connecting when I was in high school, and I was getting recruited by him in Penn State, and just really connected with him and liked him a lot. Came out on my visit, had an awesome visit.
Who was your host?
So I was with Titus, Joe Crispin, those guys. Even Joe's younger brother John was in town. He was a year behind me, so he would have been like a junior in high school, but he was up for the weekend. So I mean, we had like just such a great time and great dudes on the team. I remember seeing this guy Titus, and he's got like, we go into his apartment and he's got like snakes and fish, and I'm like, dude, like who is this guy?
He's a country boy from North Carolina. Of course. He's on my wish list. I want to get him on here too, because everybody, like, the reason I started doing this because everybody's always asking me, hey, have you heard about such and such? The advantage you have is you're in State College, so you live in State College, so you get to stay in contact with everybody. But I do get asked how people are doing, so I appreciate you doing this with me. So you enjoyed your recruiting trip. You said you're going to sign. What was the leap like for you going from high school to college?
And I should edit real quick. So Pete Lasicki and Dan too. I hung out with both those guys.
Really?
Yeah, because they were
Okay.
both seniors that year, and that would have been Dan's last year, but then he got
Was
hurt.
that his ninth year or his 10th year?
His 12th year, I think. he, he was the only one to get COVID years back then. He got COVID years
Exactly.
before it was a thing.
Trailblazer. He started the 6 year program before COVID was even a thing.
I
Yeah,
know. So
that's
it was
amazing.
kind of cool because I was like, oh man, it's too bad I won't be able to play with you. And then sure enough, I land there freshman year. I was like, I guess I do get to play with you, you know.
That's
Um,
crazy. That's right. I forgot about that.
yeah. But so I got to play with him. I played with Calvin my first year. And so back to your question is about your transition, right? Is that what you're asking
Yeah,
about?
yeah, yeah.
So, in high school, I was a center, and my coach was like, Tyler, you're in the post. You catch it, turn and shoot. Don't ever dribble. And so then I get to college, and Coach Dunn is like, all right, you're at the three, you guard Titus and make it
Wow.
happen. And I'm like, all right, because like I didn't have the greatest foot speed, like played really hard, fundamental in the right positions, but man, keeping up with Titus. And then I'm trying to guard from Michigan State. I'm trying to guard Morris Peterson, All-American, and then NBA player Michael Redd, All-American, NBA All-Star. And so I'm like, cool. And I'm not complaining. Like I'm like, listen, all
Let's
right, I
get thrown in the deep end, though.
deep end, big time. And I swear I got yelled at every single day. I'm like, is anybody else around here getting yelled at, or is it just me?
Yeah,
Because
I wasn't a guy that went around practice a lot. I didn't know that you were a practice dummy sometimes. I just can't because you always seem like the favorite to me, but that wasn't the case. It was a little rough that in the beginning.
maybe you only came my senior. By senior year, like I could do no wrong for whatever reason. Coach had moved on. He's yelling at somebody else. But my freshman year, it was like the beat out every day. And I remember two times, for whatever reason, I had a really rough practice. And after practice, go to study hall, come home, and my phone rings in my dorm, and it's Titus. And he's like, yo, man, you doing okay? And I was like, oh, thanks for calling, man. But it was really a great thing. And I'll always remember that he really recognized and was looking out for the younger guys, wanted to make sure that they were, doing okay because he knew what it was like to be a younger guy in the team and stuff, and then Dan Earl did it as well that year when for whatever reason I was just getting slammed in practice. So I always remember that as like a great leadership quality that both those guys really had. We had a lot of good leaders on that team.
No doubt.
Those two guys in particular that year really stood out to me.
Right. And when did it start they always say the game slows down for you. Like what year did you feel like, yeah, I'm in my lane, in my groove?
Yeah, that happened my junior year. So my freshman, sophomore year, I made improvements, got better. But by my junior year, Coach Dunn said, okay, we're going to shift you to the four, and you'll be more of a stretch four. You can take the ball out of bounds, trail the play, be the drag screener, set some screens, and really spread the floor out because I could shoot it a little bit. And that really, man, I was like, oh my gosh, like this is my niche. This is where I need to be. And so once that happened, the game did slow down. Everything started to get better. I was a lot more confident just in shooting the ball and trying to score. And that was a big time for me, or a big period of time too, of like kind of spiritual growth also like during college for me. And so like it was all starting to kind of like come together. And by my junior year, we had four really good seniors: Joe Crispin, Titus Ivory, Jossie Kleinherd, Scott Wachowski, and then we had some other good role players kind of filling in with John Crispin, Brandon Watkins, Jamal Tate, and even Marcus Banta to throw
Marcus, big Marcus, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's you're hitting on that 2001 season, which was often talked about and still talked about is that 2001 season. And I was doing a lot of the games for you guys. I remember going into Lexington and doing that Kentucky game, and you guys had a lot of ups and downs that year, right? Because
very much so. And it was funny. We'd have this huge high. We beat Kentucky on the road. We're like, oh my gosh, like this is for real. And then like a couple days later, we go to NC State. we're like, man, this should be another beatable opponent. Can't be as good as Kentucky. And we lose by like 18 or 20. Joe has a terrible game. And like, it was just, we were not consistent. But at the times where like we had to find a way to win, like we'd find ways to win. And so, and it wasn't like, we had this amazing chemistry all year long and just always loved each other. I mean, I can remember like the first round of the Big Ten tournament, we're playing against Michigan. And like, we have to win this game. If we lose this game, it's like, we're going to the NIT. Like, we have no chance to make the NCAAs. And we're at halftime. It's like a tie ball game, and we're all yelling at each other. And then we pull out that win. I think Brandon shot it at the buzzer, missed it, but Jossie grabbed it, laid it in for the win. So that put us into the second round of the Big Ten tournament.
And that was like right at the buzzer too, right? It was almost
right at the buzzer. And so we snuck by that first round, and then we played Michigan State, and we're like, okay, this is where, and we played them tough a couple of times, but I think the one time we were at their place, and like nobody wins at Michigan State, right? But we
tough place. Breslin is tough. Yeah,
that place is insane. And we go there and we go up like 20 in the first half. This is like during the regular season, shooting the lights out, and we're like, this is amazing, we got this. And then of course they come out, put on a huge run, and we lose by 20. It was like a 40-point swing.
Right. I forgot about that game.
Yeah, so like those are the kinds of things that like you're exactly what you're saying. There's so many kind of highs and lows, and it was not just this consistent, oh man, we're beating everybody this season. But
there was also a game, the Ohio State game, like that last home regular season game where we were up. And Joe, and I would love, hopefully I can get Joe to do this too, because I want to talk to him about it. Because it was like Joe was on fire that first half. And then the second half, he came out and he could not make a bucket. And it was just like, and I actually remember Coach Parkhill was actually associate head coach at Ohio State.
Oh,
and if you want to talk about a season of up and down, that game was up and down.
I think the same thing happened. We had a 20-point lead at home. Joe was on fire. I made 3 threes in the first half. Like everybody was hitting. And then complete turnaround. It was like we were a different team second half. They came back and beat us. And we're like, oh my gosh, and that really probably would have sealed the deal for us also in terms of getting into the NCAAs. But it was mad.
So it just started clicking in the Big Ten tournament. Like that's coaches always talk about 3 seasons. You have your preseason, pre-league games, and then you have the league, and then you have the postseason. So no matter what happened, and then you guys got in because you had some great wins going in, and then
you was strong.
Yeah, and then you get on fire in the Big Ten tournament because you made the semis, right?
Made the semis. We beat Michigan and Michigan State. And Michigan State was like number 3 at the time, and we just played them super tough in Chicago at the United Center. And then that was what launched us in, and we got the 7th seed in the tournament that year.
And talk to me about that experience. Number one, watching the selection show, having your name being called. Like, what was that feeling like? And then the preparation going in, because you guys had a pretty tough draw.
Yeah, we were so fired up. We had a little room in the BJC, and we're all gathered around the big screen TV, and we're thinking we're in, but it's like maybe like a half-hour show on Selection Sunday, and they went through like 3 of the 4 brackets, and we still hadn't been picked. We're like, oh man, maybe this isn't happening. And then finally, like, our name popped up, and we just went crazy. I mean, like the greatest basketball feeling I think in my 4 years up to that point. And just knowing like we were going to actually be part of March Madness, because everybody watches it now, to actually like be playing in it was just unbelievable,
Right. And then you guys draw North Carolina.
Yeah.
Did you have Providence? You had Providence first, right?
Yeah, we Providence first. They were the 10 seed, and like all the commentators were like, "Oh, this is a perfect upset game." In terms of seeding, Providence really good. They've got this 7-1 guy who was a good center, and they had the
Linehan, right? The guard.
Linehan was the little guard. He was the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and leading up to that game, all we saw were highlights of him like steal, steal, deflection, steal. Like the guy was everywhere. Like you couldn't get by him. Offensively, he wasn't really that dangerous, but he totally changed the game on defense. And so I'm looking at Joe. I'm like, hey, you gonna be able to handle this guy?
Yeah, that's what I was curious about that. Like, what was, because I'm Joe. I think people don't understand because they know Joe. The people who know Joe off the court is such a great guy, but I don't think people knew the edge. He was an edgy dude on the court, and
Yeah,
he would take
yeah,
your heart out if he could. So I was
yeah.
curious what his whole disposition was going into that game.
I know he was super determined. Joe loved a challenge. He was always the underdog, and so he's like, all right, here we go again. They got this guy that everybody's hyping up to be like, arguably the best guard defender in the country, and he's like, but hey, I'm not that bad either, and
Right.
so he really took it as a challenge. And I think to this day, he's like, hey, he never stole it from me. I'm like, well, he might have
Yeah,
made you
yeah.
give it
And
over,
Joe,
but
yeah.
he never took it from you.
And Joe never lacked confidence. We can say that too.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So
I
yeah, that was a great game. You guys played your butts off, and then you get North Carolina. And what was the game plan going into that game?
Yeah, Carolina, man. We were just like, well, we got nothing to lose. I mean, they've been number one in the country for like almost half the season, I think. They had a couple of All-Americans, Julius Peppers, who went on to play in the NFL and become like the best defensive player in the NFL. I mean, these guys were so talented, and on paper, it didn't look like we should even be within 20 points of these guys. And we didn't come out that amazing, but at the first media, in fact, Brendan Haywood was their center, who has played the NBA for like 12, 13 years, 7 foot, 275, and I'm trying to guard this guy, and he's like killing me. And I'm like, dude, I don't know what you guys want me to do. Like, I'm giving
But
you
you were
everything.
strong, man. You were strong.
I was strong, and I was trying to give him everything he could handle, but even still, there's only so much. And I'm thinking, well, this is not going that well. But apparently, like Joe had like a totally different perspective on the game. And the first media, we're sitting down. He's like, we're gonna win this game. We are absolutely winning this game. He's like, they don't have it. We got it tonight. And I'm like, well, I'm glad somebody thinks so around here.
That's what you need, right? One to believe, and then let the rest of you follow.
Yeah, yeah. And then we made some adjustments. He wasn't quite as effective after that. Julius Peppers actually had the best game, I think, of anybody on their team. But yeah, Jossie had a great game. B Watt was huge, and
Titus
David.
had something to prove because
Oh
they
my gosh, yeah, yeah, because Titus is a North Carolina guy, didn't get recruited by him, so it was just everything came together at like the perfect time. And what an amazing game and upset to do that to like one of the top programs of all time.
Yeah, they beat the Blue Bloods. I was in State College, and trust me, yeah, it got a little crazy downtown after that game.
Yeah, yeah, and that was so fun for us to see because basketball just hadn't ever seen that. They hadn't seen that kind of excitement, and we were like welcoming the riots. I'm sure the university wasn't thrilled about it,
Yeah,
but we're like, sweet man, go break some stuff for
yeah,
basketball.
yeah. Let's burn some couches in Beaver Canyon. Why not? Yeah.
Yeah.
And what looking back your reflection on senior year? What did you think about your senior year?
It was a whole new challenge because our top guys and experience had left. Joe, Titus, Jossie, our core three seniors were gone. We lost Scott. We lost John Crispin because he transferred, and so I was the only returning starter. And so all of a sudden we had a pretty young team, but we're thinking like, man, we just did something amazing. Like, let's go do it again. Like in our mind,
Right.
like, hey, we can absolutely go and have a great season again. And unfortunately, we could not get together. We really struggled in the Big Ten non-conference. We lost some silly games we shouldn't have. We lost to Yale to start the season.
Oh, I remember that. Yes, that's
And I'm
right.
thinking, we just lost to Yale and at home and for our opener. Like, what is
Hey,
going on? I was so heated. I really lost my cool. I don't lose my cool a lot, but I did a lot after that game. And
but they ended up being good, if I'm not mistaken. That wasn't
yeah,
like in hindsight, that wasn't a bad loss, but at the
Yeah.
time, I'm sure.
I
Like
know.
I'm
I don't know. Yeah, what they finished at, but they had a really good year. And so me and Kenny Krimmel were the seniors that year. And we are really trying to lead this team, but it was like we were working our tails off. And I'm like, man, so this is what it feels like to give it absolutely everything you have and still come up empty at
and
the end
not
of
see the results, right?
and not see the results. And so for me, it was a really big learning experience of just because you put in everything you have and work down to the bone doesn't guarantee success.
Right.
And so, and for me, I was like, well, I guess this kind of comes to the question, like, okay, well, can you still continue to give it everything you have, or do you kind of just coast to the finish? And none of us ever took a day off. Kenny and I, we went as hard as we could every second in practice and the games as we could to the very end. And so I'm proud of our guys for that because it was such a hard season. And the very last game, I think we were playing at Purdue, and we had to win it to not finish last, I think, in the Big Ten. And I was like, man, it was just such a shock to like the ego and just to everything that like, man, here we won 21 games last year, beating all these great teams, and now we're losing 21 games like just like that overnight.
Yeah.
And so that was really hard for me personally. It just felt like a bit of a failure in a way. Like, man, these other guys led our team, and we had a great year, one for the ages. And then this time, like, Kenny and I are leading the team, and I feel like we're just completely dropping the ball.
Yeah, but I'm sure in hindsight you realize how great a job you guys were doing as captains and like the impact you made, not just on the team, but like the university. Like everybody talks glowingly about you guys to this day. So that's something obviously you can hang on to. And so when you are getting towards the end of the season, are you getting nibbles about playing at the next level? What are your thoughts about? Because you're a gym rat for anyone who doesn't know. So I never thought that you were going to just stop playing basketball. I figured you go continue to play, and who knew you were going to have this great journey. Like, tell me about that process of playing at the next level.
Yeah, I really wanted to keep playing, and the first guy I really knew that would play overseas and that did play overseas and did well at it was Pete Lasicki. I started kind of following his career, and throughout my 4 years at Penn State, our trainer John Smitty, he'd be taping ankles, and he'd pause, like go check his computer, and then he'd just come out busting laughing. We're like, Smitty, what's so funny? He's like, I just got this email from Pete Lasicki, man, and he's telling me these stories about how he's keeping like cash in his freezer, like because he's getting paid by like the mob and like
Right.
these
Because you're
countries and
in
stuff.
Italy. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm like, this is insane. And so, and he would read us these emails, and I'm like, dude, these stories are just epic. They're so funny. They're so unique. And I'm like, man, I got all my life to work. Like I have no desire to jump into a real job. And I remember my parents even being like, are you sure you don't want to just maybe interview somewhere as a backup plan? I'm like, no backup plan. Like,
You're that kid. And those your parents are so wonderful, and you're probably giving them like indigestion with the whole "I'm going to travel the world" thing, playing hoops.
So, but I was like, I'm finding some way, who knows where it's going to be. But also I've got guys like Pete they're making good money playing in the top leagues, and I talked to other Penn State guys that were over there, like Dan Earl, he's playing in Germany, and who's the other Matt Gaudio, he had played in Italy, signed like a 3-year deal for like a lot of money, and I'm thinking, well, shoot, those guys are making like this much, I can at least make like 100, 150 my first year. And I was about to hit reality here in a second. And so I'm like talking to any and every agent I can, just trying to, play all angles. Cause I'm like, shoot, if I only have one agent, he only has one network. But if I can talk to like 6 or 7 agents in different places, that'll open up my opportunities. So I got a call in June, and it was an agent that was an American guy that lived in Germany. And he's like, hey, good news, I got an offer for you. I'm like, great. He's like, it's in Holland. I'm like, okay, cool. He's like, it's really good. They speak English. And he's telling me all these positive things. I'm like, yeah, but like, how much is it?
Yeah, you're not talking money. That's a problem. That's a red flag.
Yeah. And he's like, well, it's 2,200 a month. And I'm like, 22. And I'm trying to do quick math.
Do the
I'm like,
math.
how long is the season? It's like 8 months. I'm like, dude, that's like 16, maybe 18 grand like for the season. And he's like, I know, man. He's like, I'll try and get it up. So he ended up getting like $250 more a month. So I made like $2,500 a month my first year playing for this like really small team. But it was awesome. I played in Holland, and that first year, really good coach, and it ended up being a great way to kind of experience overseas because so many people did speak English. It was a really welcoming, like family kind of environment. It wasn't some big club. Like there were really great guys in the team, and it was an awesome way to kind of kick things off.
Yeah, and so you end up playing. Let's see. Is it 12 countries? 12 teams, 7 countries, 4 continents, and
Yeah,
obviously because you were solid, like they just Americans are so disposable, but because you were, I don't even have. I'm not guessing because I just know what kind of player you were. Just a solid player that any team could just plug and play in any country is I guess that was the reputation. So you would get offers at the end of every year pretty much, right?
yeah. I mean, you'd finish a season like in maybe April or May, and then it's waiting game. And you're like, all right, well, does that team want me back? No. Does anybody else in the league want me back? No. All right, well, what about other countries nearby? Because usually if you're playing in a country, the nearby countries like will kind of, keep an eye on each other. But if I'm playing in Holland, like, well, how does anybody know about me like in Asia or South America or whatever? And so I actually had a streak of like 5 or 6 years in a row where I had a different agent find me a job each year. So it wasn't like I had the exact same agent every time. I would have
Right.
loved to have done it that way, but the guy that got my first job, he couldn't really find me anything for the next year. And so it was very stressful in the summertime because
Yeah.
I so badly wanted to know, like, okay, well, where am I going next year? And everybody's asking, where are you going? I'm like, I don't know. And, but
But I do know that I was lucky enough for whatever reason, maybe this was the genesis of you writing the book, is that you would send out these emails. It sounds like similar to what Pete was doing. And they were like the funniest things because, you would pop up just the random times from random countries, but have these great stories to tell. So I'm sure that was one of the ways that you kind of, bided your time being so far away from home.
Yeah, I mean, you gather all these stories from these crazy journeys, and you're in these different countries, and everything is so different and challenging, and you don't understand people, and like it's just stuff like you just can't even think of. As an American, everything is pretty like straightforward. Like, okay, I know how to get around and go to the grocery store, and if I get sick, go see a doctor. But like if that happens in another country, like you have no idea what could happen.
Right.
And so like I would send these stories. I'm like, listen, I know you guys are probably working your regular jobs, doing your regular thing, but like you got to hear this, man. Like you will not believe what just happened. Like this team's not paying me, and they say like something's wrong with my bank account, but I guarantee you nothing's wrong with my bank account. It's them.
Right. So when do you decide that you're gonna? And the book is called "Call for Traveling," right? Tell us about the book for those who haven't gotten their hands on it, and that's the book cover, and you can still get it on Amazon, right?
Yeah, still on Amazon. I got copies too. If somebody wants to send it to someone, I'm happy to write a little message or sign it, whatever. It'll probably decrease its value, but it's out there.
Great
And
stories, though. Great stories.
fun stories. And my whole goal behind it was I had these collection of emails and stories to kind of go on. So I had a lot of it recorded already, but just in a very sporadic way. And so I started to kind of piece it together and said, okay, in 2013, I did a New Year's resolution. I said, you know what, this is the year. I'm going to try and put a book together. Maybe only my mom and her book club will read it, but at least I'll be able to share it with my kids someday. And so I wrote one chapter a month. So in January, I wrote about Holland. And then in February, I wrote about Italy. That was my second year over there. And then just kind of pieces all. And every year had their own unique, funny stories, craziness. And then, I get married, we bring kids into the equation, and it's like it just snowballs and gets nuttier. And so I'd read like one other book by Paul Shirley, and it was called Can I Keep My Jersey? So if anybody likes basketball books, it is the funniest book you will read, in my opinion. I thought
I
it was
haven't
really
heard of that. I got to write that down.
yeah, Can I Keep My Jersey? I mean, just what an epic title. Like that just says it
Yes.
all. You know, he's a journeyman as well, but he had a little longer time in the NBA than I did. He had some good call-ups and stuff, and talks about playing against Kobe, and just Kobe would just like abuse him and stuff, in practice. But so I kind of pieced it all together, and I thought, listen, I don't know how to write a book. I wasn't an English major. I just know I have a lot of funny stories to tell. I'm going to write them down. And then at the end of it, we'll see. Well, sure enough, by December 31st that year, I had a full first copy, first draft. And I was like, all right, I did it. Like, now what?
Yeah, there's no book. But this is right around the time like social media is starting to grow, right?
Yeah, a
Well,
little
it's
bit.
already been there.
Yeah, it's been there a little bit. It was so 2013, 2014. And so I was able to connect with a couple of guys that kind of helped me edit it and maybe tighten it up, make it a little cleaner. And when I would get long-winded, okay, let's chop all that out. And my best editor was actually my wife. I'd be like, hey, sweetie, what do you think of this? And she's like, oh, yeah, don't write that. That's dumb. Or, this is very boring. I'm like, okay, good words. I'll get rid of that. And so then I thought it was all done. It was all edited, and I was like, all right, I'll either just self-publish it, or my true goal through it all is like, it would be awesome to have this in Barnes and Noble, like sitting on the bookshelf like that, and to have like an actual publisher like publish it. Like, to
Right.
me,
And go to the book signing and be at a book signing.
yes. So and I didn't see myself as an author, right? But here I had this manuscript, and I thought it was okay. And the feedback I got was enough positive stuff where I was like, I don't think everybody's lying to me. I think most people like really are, enjoying it. And I had some people kind of read the version of it before it was put out, and I sent it to my high school English teacher, who had written a couple books, and I was like, hey, Mr. Ferry, would you do me a favor and just read this? Just tell me what you think. And, I'm thinking he's going to like write a couple comments or whatever. And
You
so,
send it back with a bunch of red marks on it.
yeah. And I think I'm all done. Right. And he's like, well, that's not bad for a first draft. And I'm like,
Whoa.
oh, geez, spoken like a true English teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah. So
you're ready to put it out into the world. He's like, all right, well, you're just starting, buddy.
Yeah, I think I'm ready. So we go through all of it again and just, piece by piece, break it down. So this ends up being like years in the making. I wrote it in 2013, and then 14, 15, I'm like editing, and trying to figure it out. And then I actually did land a publisher. And these guys actually like paid me a little bit, not a ton. I'm not Nicholas Sparks or whatever, but they paid me something to actually publish my book. I'm like, this is unbelievable. So, and then it went out. It was in Barnes and Noble. I saw it, but like, this is so cool. There's Mike Krzyzewski, and there's me. Like,
right.
I was like, his book will be there a lot longer than mine will, but that's okay. Like, like,
and it seems like one of your teammates also wrote a book, and Joe wrote a book on coaching. So, yeah. So,
boom.
Of the guys, offense wins. So yes, of course, of course. I talked to him at length. This is probably 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know how long ago, but man, basketball mind. He's definitely a high basketball IQ. So anybody who loves, the X's and O's and that's a good book to read. If you if you want gut belly laughs where you almost pee on yourself, your book is the book to read.
a little different genre.
Yeah, well, I think, and I told Pete this when I was talking to him, is one of the mistakes I made was like I just didn't want to play basketball anymore, but I probably could have played overseas. And just for the cultural experience, I should have done it. Now, I've played catch up, and I've gone to other countries, and I've played basketball on my own dime, but that had to be so fulfilling to have all these different experiences in your your formative adult years anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it really was, man. And I'm so glad I had a chance to do it and was really just fortunate, just blessed to be able to like get some opportunities because like no year was ever guaranteed. It wasn't like, oh man, this is some like can't miss guy that, averaged double doubles and the ACC or something. Like every year was kind of a fight for me to like stay on. And there'd be years where I would have like no offers. There would be like no nibbles until like all of a sudden I got an email from a Uruguayan agent, and he was like, "Hello, Tyler, do you want to play basketball in Uruguay?" Like, where is Uruguay?
Yeah.
But if you were going to pay me, like,
Yeah,
I got nothing else going on.
exactly.
So my whole goal was just to get to that next job, get one more opportunity, get one more, and then finally, like, it was funny. I had these jobs in South America, Uruguay, and Argentina, and then that turned into I got an opportunity to go to like this draft camp for China in the middle of the woods in Oregon. They had like there's this complex out there, and they invited 80 guys. And I go out there, and they're like, listen, there's no guarantee. Like, they're only going to pick a handful of guys, but China Pro Basketball would do a draft for their Americans strictly from that camp. And so like I go out there and like was probably like 79 or 80th like on the prospect list, but I was able to sneak in and I played great. Like everything was just going in. And so all of a sudden I look like this guy. But wouldn't you know it, like I didn't get selected to get a contract. But there was a guy there watching, and his name is Rick Barry, NBA Hall of Famer. And sure enough, he's like, Tyler, and I'll never forget this. He goes, "It is a shame that you are not in the NBA right now." And I'm like,
Rick, hey, Rick Barry, man, that's great praise right there. I would have retired right there.
Like, Rick, you must really love charges in front of the folks. but like for whatever reason, I was maybe 26 at the time. And I progressed a long way from my days in college and really kept getting a lot better, and was able to play with some higher level guys. And I'm like, well, hey man, if you want to make some calls for me, please do.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'd be happy to. I was like, sweet. I didn't think he would. So he called Pat Riley, he called Jerry Sloan, and he got me a workout with the Jazz. So sure enough, I ended up going and have an opportunity to just do like a 2-day workout with the Jazz, like in September. And man, I think like this is it. Like I have made it. I could die after this 2 days and I'll be good. But it was really cool. So here I was like a couple I don't know, maybe 9-12 months ago, carrying my own toilet paper in like South America to away games. and now I'm like flying first class to the Utah Jazz, and there's going to be a driver that picks me up. Like, this is amazing.
Yes. And you're living in the moment, which I give you kudos for, because some guys would not like soak that in as it's happening.
So in the moment, man. So in the moment. Like, because I'm like, this might end in like 5 minutes. And I remember after my couple-day workout, they didn't really say anything. I was like, well, I know the training camp's coming up, but like they didn't say like, hey, get out of here, or yeah, you're coming. So I'm like, I guess I'm just gonna go show up at the facility and see what happens. I'm a little nervous. I'm really nervous, but I'm like, I don't know like how this stuff works, because all these other guys I've been training with, like, they had like deals already made, like, oh yeah, like I'm signed through half the season, or I just got drafted or whatever, and I've been working out with those guys. But now like Carlos Boozer and Darren Williams and all these big name guys were like coming in and stuff. And I show up and they're like, well, yeah, we're glad you showed up. We'd like you to come to training camp. And I'm like, sweet. So I was like, all right, note to self, like show up, like life lesson.
I got that covered. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was funny, man. So it's like I had such a range of experiences from like kind of small mid-level countries in Europe, and then here I am like for like a month in the NBA and training camp with the Jazz, and then I was over in Asia, in Japan, and like I blend in so well in Japan, man.
I think you asked me to reach out to Hovas or something. Didn't I connect you with Hovas over there?
You did. Yeah. because I'd heard about Hovas. I hadn't met him, but I knew like there had been this Penn State guy, Tom Hovas, that had played in Japan for like a decade. I'm like, well, that's pretty amazing. And then all of a sudden I find myself like going to Japan. I'm like, well, I gotta look this guy up. And at that time, he had just kind of a regular corporate job, I think, in California. And but he was getting out of that, and he's like, man, I just miss basketball. I'm getting back into coaching. I'm gonna come coach women in Japan. And I'm like, okay, but like, his wife was from Japan, and he spoke Japanese, and like, yeah,
He
what a great
stuck out too, just like you, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, dude, the two of us, man, hilarious over there. But what a super guy, and he actually landed like in the same city that I was my first couple years in Japan, so we got to meet up, and it was really cool to hear his experiences.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing I love about not just Penn State, but the basketball is that there is definitely a connection of the ages, the vintages.
Yeah,
because we're I don't know, 15 years older than you probably.
yeah. You're what year did you finish? 88?
89.
89, yeah, and I was '02, so yeah, 13. I mean, but you guys were always so good to like be around and encourage, because like when you're just kind of coming into school as a freshman, and trying to find your way, and you don't really know like all the history that's been there before you, but those guys, like, come to find out now, like, I'm super interested in like how this team is doing, and like, hey, can I help guys like make connections and get overseas, because like Pete Lisicki was really great about that, and Dan Earl and Jared Stevens and Calvin, like all those guys, like, yeah, you can talk to my agent, talk to these guys. So because I had no idea where to start.
Right.
But yeah, and I like John Hara, like I was really happy for him that he landed in Spain this year. And you talked to him at all lately? I
Oh
don't
yeah,
know.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. I was helping him with the his the basketball tournament, getting
Yeah.
that all. Were you on a call, right? When you
Yeah, I
that's
was
what
on
I
the initial
thought.
call, and yeah, is that
Yeah,
coming together?
yeah, I love the fact that he's put a team together, and I already have it written in that I'm gonna come check it out and support them, because I think it'll be great to get the band back, for them to get their band back together.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
man.
and
It's
John, there were got you and Titus and Matt Gaudio. There were guys that were younger than I was. That, man, I would love to play with those guys, because you were definitely Penn State guys. And John, I mean, he could have gone and left Penn State, but Penn State was in his blood, and he represented the university so well. And he's gonna own the world, whatever he does, just because of who he is.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm
yeah.
really happy for him. So okay, I'm not a married guy, but you're getting towards the end of your career. Tell me about the whole how Mama is dealing with. You're playing overseas. How's the transition? When did you decide? You know what? Okay, it's time to hang it up and be girl dad.
Yeah. So we had one kid and then a second kid while we were overseas. They were born in the US. That was like, fortunately, the timing actually worked out great for both of them. It wasn't like during the season, it was right, at the end or right after. And our oldest was about to turn 5, and I was 33. I'm like, man, I've done this for 11 years, and I didn't really have any offers. For whatever reason, like I played in Japan my last 5 years, and had a short stint in Thailand. And I was like, you know what, maybe this is it. And we want to kind of settle in one place. We've been all over, always traveling. Like, let's settle in State College. We had a house here, and I was able to shadow a couple of guys for a medical device job that looked kind of interesting. And then I got offered a position, and I'm like, okay, well, great. This seems like it'll be a good fit. My body was starting to feel a little bit. It was, getting a little bit tiresome, like waking up every day and just
Sure.
everything hurts. Everything hurts. And I was like, boy, it would be nice to be able to just like, have the body feel a lot better. And so, right as I was about to take that job, a team in Japan calls, and they said, hey, we'd love to have you for like the second half of the season. And I'm like, oh, well, that's great. Like, I'd love to, maybe finish out the year. And it was like, around November, and just go till May. And they said, well, yeah, it's just 1 year. And I said, well, then, I'm kind of back where I am before. And like, this job offer, like, here in State College might not be there. So I'm like, well, I don't know. And I said, tell you what, if you make it another year, I'll play 2 more years, and then that'll be a great like way to go out kind of on my terms. And Kara was like, hey, whatever you want to do, if you want to go and play, another year and a half, great. Like we'll go back over, because we had gotten pretty comfortable in Japan. The first year in Japan, different story, man. I mean, it was a hard adjustment.
Yeah.
We had a 2-month-old, and we're living in this really challenging place to communicate, and everything was hard. But then after we've been there a few years, we're like, actually, like we would love to go back to Japan. Like we really know our way around and stuff. And so I'm thinking, all right, another year and a half. But then I'm like, gosh, I don't know. Like this, it seemed like it was a pretty neat opportunity. Justin Kirpakis and Mike Lukac, a couple of Penn State football guys. They seem like really great guys to work with. And I was like, maybe this could be a good start. And so, really thought about it, prayed about it. I was like, I think it's time. I think I'll go out on this note. I just had like a 2-month contract in Thailand where like all kinds of crazy happened. And I'm like, this might be a really good way to finish, and I remember I had made my last shot in my last game in Thailand, and we won by like a point or two. And I was like,
Nice.
it's kind of fun. And it wasn't a championship. It was like
Right.
third place or something, whatever it was. But it was, I felt good about it. And I talked to Joe, and I'm like, Joe, I don't really know what the best route to go is. And he's like, listen, you've got the freedom to do whatever you want. He's like, there's no wrong answer. Both are good options. And I just thought, hey, this would be good timing. So I'm really glad that it played out like that. Had I gone back and played another year and a half, I'm sure that would have been great, but I was just kind of ready. I felt like 11 years I felt really good about that, and just had all kinds of fun experiences and visited a lot of neat places. So it was good timing.
Yeah, and so you landed at State College. Was that always going to be the plan? I mean, it's a great place to raise a family, so I can totally see wanting to do that. But was that always part of the plan?
Yeah, it really kind of evolved. I loved coming back to train with the Penn State guys. So like every summer, I'm like, man, this is perfect. I got the trainers here. I got guys to play with, stay in shape, and just really love the community. And as we bought a house in 2008, kind of right in the middle of my playing overseas, and that was so nice to have a place to like steady to come back to, because with all of like the chaos, like you just never knew where you were going to be from like a couple weeks or months to the next with my work, my job. And so I'm like, it is nice to have a home base to kind of know where we're going to be. And so I said, you know what, it's a great place. Like as a student at Penn State, you don't really know like around the community as much like what's going on, because I was just so into Penn State.
Right.
But we just started to see, gosh, there's so much going on for kids and for families and stuff. So it became really an easy decision for me and for us to be able to stay here.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you did, and thank you for entrusting me with your first house, by the way.
It
Yeah,
happened.
yeah,
I'll never forget. I was like, so yeah, like what do you do? It's like, well, I'm in mortgages, and like, I was a young guy in his 20s. I didn't really know like what all that meant and stuff. And you're like, listen, I sell dreams. Okay, I sell dreams.
I still say that. Now I've tweaked a little bit. I facilitate dreams.
Facilitate dreams.
Yeah.
You
So
were really good at it, man. You made it so easy for me. It was such a smooth process. I love sitting down with you. You had your mouse going and like this huge screen, like you and Johnny working together, but that was really cool.
now, actually, working with people like the first time home buyers is sort of why I still do it. It's just because it can be so overwhelming. And then you throw in the fact that you're a Penn State basketball alum. It's like, I got to take care of, I got to make sure that this is a pleasant experience and he doesn't pull his hair out. So, yeah. And
Yeah, it worked out perfectly. We loved working with you on that, and I mean, I felt so at ease. Like I don't know what I'm doing, BA. Just tell me what I need to do.
yeah, because if I messed up, there was nowhere for me to hide. I would have been run out of town. So, have you had a chance to watch the current team? I know you're there. Like, how involved or uninvolved are you? I know you're definitely involved in Coaches versus Cancer, but just give me your impressions of the team.
Yeah, they've been really fun to watch this year. I mean, the way they're shooting the ball, I've been really impressed because sometimes teams will start out non-conference and like shoot really well from three or whatever, and like, oh man, these guys got it. And then conference season rolls around, it's like different story. But they've been able to kind of keep some of that really good shooting going. Their offense is a lot better this year. I mean, last year offensively, they just struggled to score points, and that was just that's hard to watch, as fans. I'm sure it's hard to play as players. You're like, man, we're like barely getting to the 60s last year, but now like they're beating good teams at home, on the road. And so they've been really fun to watch. I love what they've been able to do, like through the portal, and kind of get guys in that can play right away. Because if you're recruiting knuckleheads like me that take like 3 years to develop, it's like, oh my gosh, when's this guy going to get good?
You crack me up.
But Andrew Funk, man, boy, he is fun to watch. What a quick release, and like just pick up, pick it. I'm like, dude, I watch him so close. I'm like, how is he just like getting this guy down there, like dribble, 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 and then all of a sudden he's like a foot from the basket.
You cannot speed that kid up. He is going at his own pace, and I call it the old man in the park game, because you can watch all the scouting tape, your video of him you want, but you're just not, because he has a counter to everything you're throwing at him. And I love Funk. He came from Bucknell, and one of my good friends, Kevin, played at Bucknell with one of my high school teammates. So any chance I get, I am trolling him, because Andrew has been a great. I think Mike has done a fantastic job of using that portal to his advantage, and the product is so fun to watch this year. They're really lighting it up.
I didn't think they would be as far as they are, just because when you change coaches, man, it takes a while. But I'm really pleased and happy for them. I actually ran into Coach Shrews yesterday over at a gymnastics meet, funny enough, and he was watching his daughter, and I was like, Coach, I was like, you and I, man, we're like gymnastics gurus, man.
Exactly. You guys can probably do a little bit on the beam, I'm sure. Well, look, man, I appreciate the time. Fantastic stories. You and Pete could be two of the top storytellers ever, with Mr. Weidman there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody just loves to hear, what's going on in your life, and sounds like everything's going fantastic. You're again one of those guys that you're always going to land on the bed of feathers, just because you get back what you throw out, and you've always been positive energy as far as I'm concerned. So thanks again for the time. I know you're a busy man, and tell the lovely bride I just saw her. Tell her I said hello.
BA says hi, everybody. BA says hi.
And
thanks for doing this, man. I love that you're kind of connecting guys, and you've always been like the best connector of people, and for sure the best one for Penn State basketball. So I love that you're just kind of like this anchor, man, that like everybody's connected to you and you're connected to everybody. So it's like it's really cool. You need that when you have this kind of family and history of any kind of organization.
Well, I appreciate it, and if you're an old washed-up basketball player like I am, you have to contribute some way, and not living in State College anymore, I feel like I have to do something to let everybody know. Number one, Penn State basketball is on the rise. The program is in great hands, and that the alumni, more importantly, are really supporting the team. So that's kind of like my motivation for doing this. So I appreciate you being a part of that.
Yeah, well, you're awesome to do it, man. Thank you so much for having me on, and I can't wait to see the next ones you do, and see some of these other.
Hey, spread the word, man. Any of you guys you still talk to, just tell them to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk, because again, people want to know what you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, you're the best one to do it, and thanks so much, man. It's awesome.
Man. Take care.